course, I'm Perry White, joined by my man Zach McKinnell from FCS Football Central. Zach, we're breaking down the SWAC schools, football teams from last year as we're looking ahead into SWAC Media Day, and we talked about Mississippi Valley, Bethune-Cookman, and UAPB thus far. Let's jump into the next team, Grambling State in 2024. The Tigers went 5-7 and 2-6 in conference play. The notable win last year was a 41-20 non-conference victory against a conference foe, Jackson State, but their worst loss on the season, 40-10 versus UL, the University of Louisiana Lafayette. Let's look at their offensive rankings last year, Blue. Third in the conference in scoring, averaging 24 points a game. They were 11th in total offense, averaging 282 yards a game. 10th in rush offense, averaging 111 yards rushing a game. And then 9th in pass offense, averaging 170 yards passing a game. Let's look at defensively. 4th in the conference in scoring, giving up an average of 24 points a game. They were 9th in total defense, giving up an average of 377 yards a game. 4th in rush defense, an average of 446 yards given up for the Grambling State defense. And 12th, very last in pass defense, giving up an average of 230 yards a game in passing. Looking at Grambling last year, Blue. Blue, you there?
Yeah, I got you now. My bad, man. You cut out on my end.
All right. Well, I'll go back over Grambling. Looking at them offensively and defensively, man, what do you think about the Tigers from last year?
I think it was a tale of two seasons, right, Perry? You look early in the season, they forced so many turnovers in those first handful of games that where it was either defensive touchdowns or setting their offense up for short drives, and I think that was the key to winning the Jackson game, right? I think without turnovers, they probably lose a handful of those early games on their schedule. Maybe we're looking at Mickey Joseph and the Scrambling team different, but then you saw later in the season when they weren't forcing as many turnovers, Perry, they weren't as good. I just don't think defensively down to down they were very good. It was either we're going to force a turnover or, have some sort of big negative play, or we're going to give up a long drive for a touchdown. I think offensively they looked in disarray. I think that is contributed to the offensive coordinator hire, but we won't delegate that on this show because that's been talked about on every show in the country. So I think making the OC change was the biggest thing, but hearing Mickey Joseph talk, though, Perry, the reason that this team's so intriguing to me next year, and I would say that there's a good chance Grambling could be the dark horse of the conference, and it's because, like Mickey Joseph said earlier this spring, and they returned, he said, about 88% of the roster from last season and redshirted about 50% of his freshman class. So they were really, really picky with what they brought in, and they really didn't bring in a whole ton of new talent in there. It was just like we wanted to address the needs because we felt pretty comfortable with the roster. I really like what they did on the offensive line. Brought in some all-conference JUCO guys. You got Ty Keys and T-Set coming in at quarterback. It's going to be a very, very interesting quarterback battle there. And then on top of that, too, you just go and address some of your needs at skill positions. You bring in a guy like Cameron Williams from Hines that was an all-conference guy. But then I'll say this, Terry. I talked to someone pretty close to the program earlier this spring, and if you remember 2 years ago, Grambling had that elite running back room that all those guys ended up going to play FBS football after Hugh got fired. They think that this running back core this upcoming season is better than that team. And if that's the case, and Mickey Joseph is actually going to be more hands-on play calling, I'm going to be very curious to see how big of a step forward you could take offensively because Ty Keys and especially T-Set bring a sort of athleticism that a guy like Miles Crawley did not. I think Miles Crawley is a more refined passer than both of those guys, Perry. But let's just be honest. I mean, Miles Crawley wasn't running anywhere. So I think it brings a whole nother wrinkle to the offense for Grambling. It's just going to be, can they win close games? Because outside of forcing a bunch of turnovers, they really struggled when they didn't win the turnover battle, winning those close games. So Grambling's going to be very interesting, and I'm very curious to see what this offense looks like. Because I think defensively they were young, and they should take a small step forward next year.
Eric Dooley no longer there as the offensive coordinator. Blue, we got about 6 minutes, maybe about 5 minutes here as we continue to go. Prairie View is the next team we're looking at. In 2024, the Panthers went 5-7. They were 3-5 in conference play. Notable win on the season, 31-12 victory over Florida A&M. Their worst loss, a 40-0 loss to Michigan State. Offensively, looking back at the Panthers last year, they were 9th in scoring, averaging 21 points a game. They were 7th in total offense, averaging 313 yards a game. 9th in rush offense, averaging 113 yards a game, and 5th in pass offense, averaging 199 yards a game. Defensively for the Panthers, 6th in scoring defense in the conference, giving up an average of 27 points a game. 7th in total defense, giving up an average of 364 yards a game. They were 3rd in rush defense, one of the top in the conference, giving up an average of 146 rushing yards a game, and 9th blue in pass defense, giving up an average of 218 yards a game. Prairie View Panthers for you.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest, Perry. I'm a little bit of a believer. I know it's not a popular opinion because a lot of people have had thoughts about this PV team, but I'll be honest, Perry, I don't think they were good last year. And I think coming in, Tremaine Jackson knew that, like, if you're a new head coach, Perry, because we know that coaches get fired year 2 in this conference, why would I ride with a bunch of guys that I don't think are very good football players? And I think he went and addressed a lot of needs. And I think there's a difference between adding a whole lot of players in the transfer portal that are unproven and adding a bunch of guys that are proven. And they added nearly 20 players with significant playing experience at either their previous institution and or the Division I level. So I really do think that PV, I believe they revamped this roster, Perry, and I think they're going to be by far the most intriguing team to watch in this conference. And Tremaine Jackson is a winner. He's won everywhere he's been. I have no reason to think that if you're a winner, you're going to win wherever you are. And I think Tremaine Jackson has a chance to win at PV.
Let's look at this. About a minute left before we get ready for break. What is it that's so intriguing about that transfer portal that has everybody talking about this program?
Well, I think it goes back to what I said. I mean, I just think it's the talent that they added. They added a bunch of guys that played and or were significant contributors at their last institution. And when you bring all these guys together with all that experience, and also on top of that, a lot of these guys came from pretty good programs. I don't see why you would think that anything's going to change. They brought in a few guys from Valdosta that can help instill the culture at PV that they're bringing from Valdosta. And you look across his staff, all of those guys have either been with them or been around other winning programs. I just don't see how you bring in a winning staff and a whole bunch of really good transfers and you take a step backwards. And also, too, I don't know if you can go much lower than kind of where PV was trending. I think it's up. I don't know if they win the SWAC West this year, Perry, and or they win the SWAC, but I do think PV takes a massive step forward on the field.